Welcome to the Philosophical Odysseys podcast. Imagine your leg as being, well, deliberately and methodically broken by another human being.
Oh, wow. Starting heavy.
Right. But just picture it. You have zero legal rights. You literally cannot fight back without guaranteeing your own execution.
Yeah, you're just trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are entirely at the physical mercy of someone who basically views you as farm equipment.
Which is horrifying.
It is. But here is the question for you, the listener. In that exact moment, are you the ultimate victim or are you the freest person on earth?
I mean, it sounds like a completely absurd question, honestly.
Yeah.
The visceral reaction is, obviously you're the ultimate victim.
Yeah, it's the absolute pinnacle of enslavement. But today, we're taking a journey into the mind of a man who lived that exact reality.
And somehow chose the latter option.
Yes, we are looking at a masterclass in extreme psychological survival today. We're pulling from this remarkably extensive video essay and some modern philosophical commentary.
Really fascinating material, by the way.
Oh, totally. It dissects the life, the trauma, and the teachings of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus.
Specifically looking at his manual for living, right?
Yeah, this tiny explosive document known as the Enchiridion.
So our mission for this deep dive is to isolate the most potent practical insights from his exceptionally severe brand of Stoicism.
Because it is severe.
It really is. But we're also going to fiercely debate a profoundly uncomfortable question raised by the commentary.
And I love this part.
Right. Does the radical acceptance of your fate actually forge mental invincibility? Or, does it merely engineer a passive, complicit participant in a broken world?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to even approach that question, we kind of have to strip away the marble bust ivory tower image of ancient philosophy.
Yeah, Epictetus wasn't just theorizing about suffering from some palace.
Not at all. He was born around 50 AD in Phrygia, which is modern-day Turkey. And the source drops a detail early on that completely resets how we should view his entire body of work.
Which is that Epictetus isn't even his real name. Yeah, the Greek translation of Epictetus is simply acquired or gained.
It's basically a receipt.
Exactly. Whoever he was at birth, whatever name his mother gave him, was entirely erased.
He was rebranded with a label functioning exactly like a modern barcode.
And he spent his youth in Rome, enslaved to Epaphroditos, who was himself a freedman of the infamous Emperor Nero.
Which, I mean, the psychological layering there is just intense.
Oh, absolutely.
Being a slave to a former slave who survived Nero's chaotic, murderous court.
Yeah, it suggests an environment that's just steeped in a brutal, almost generational cycle of abuse and paranoia.
And within that household, Epictetus was physically crippled.
And the source explores two historical theories about his leg, and the divergence between them is super fascinating.
Yeah, what's the first one?
So some ancient writers, notably Simplicius, suggested Epictetus was just born with a severe physical disability.
Okay.
The narrative basically follows that, because he couldn't perform grueling manual labor, his supposedly benevolent master permitted him to study philosophy instead.
But the creator of our video essay completely dismantles that theory.
Yeah, using basic Roman economics, right?
Exactly. The slave market in Rome was brutally pragmatic.
Cold and calculating.
Nobody purchases a congenitally crippled slave for a household staff, not unless that individual already possesses, elite training as a physician or a master artisan.
Which a kid wouldn't have.
Right. So the dominant historical narrative, and the one the source argues is far more economically and psychologically plausible, is that his master broke his leg.
In a fit of rage or as a calculated punishment.
Yeah, leaving him permanently disabled.
And establishing that violence really frames his entire philosophical project.
It changes everything about how you read him.
It does. I mean, he was eventually freed after Nero's death, and he transitioned into teaching philosophy in Rome.
But then he faced another massive upheaval, right?
Yeah, in 93 AD, Emperor Domitian exiled all philosophers from the city.
Just kicked them all out.
Yeah, so Epictetus was forced to uproot whatever fragile stability he had built. He migrated to Greece to establish a new school in Nicopolis.
And he became so influential there that Emperor Adrian eventually sought him out.
A literal emperor going to see a former slave.
It's incredible. And, the contrast between this lived experience and our modern self-help ecosystem is staggering.
No, it's night and day.
The modern landscape is saturated with these luxury gurus. They broadcast from multi-million-dollar estates advising you to embrace minimalism or find peace in poverty.
Yeah, the dissonance of the messenger totally undermines the message there.
Exactly.
It is really easy to preach detachment from material wealth when you possess a vast surplus of it.
But Epictetus is the antithesis of that. When he instructs you to endure unimaginable hardship, it carries the undeniable density of a man who survived the absolute bottom of the Roman social hierarchy.
He had no safety net.
No trust fund, zero fundamental human rights.
So his philosophy wasn't some intellectual exercise for fun. It was cognitive body armor forged in a furnace of actual systemic abuse.
And to survive an existence where you are legally classified as an object,
Yeah.
where your physical form can be permanently altered by someone else's tantrum, you have to construct an internal reality where you are untouchable.
He built a mental fortress because a physical one was literally denied to him.
Right. And that survival mechanism birthed his most famous and perhaps most controversial framework.
The theater of life.
Yes. The source breaks down this core worldview so vividly. Epictetus argued that existence is basically a stage play.
And God or the universe or fate, the nomenclature doesn't really matter, is the director.
And you are merely an actor in the ensemble.
Crucially, though, you are denied any input during the casting process.
Right, you don't get a say.
You do not get to request the role of the wealthy aristocrat or the heroic general or the beloved public figure.
The director assigns the roles unilaterally.
Yeah, you might be cast as the beggar, the exile, or in his case, the crippled slave.
So your sole locus of control, and therefore your only actual responsibility, is to execute your assigned role to the absolute limit of your ability.
Without uttering a single complaint about the script.
None. Staring enviously at the actor, playing the emperor, or lamenting the torn rags of your own costume is a catastrophic waste of psychological energy.
Because you cannot fire the director.
Exactly. You can only master your performance.
Now, the video essay pulls this concept violently into the present day to test its structural integrity.
Which I think is so necessary.
It is. It asks you, the listener, to apply this exact mindset to the friction of modern economic and social systems.
It sets up a scenario most people know way too well. Imagine you are navigating an era of crushing inflation where labor doesn't even cover basic shelter.
A very real scenario for many.
You invest years into a difficult degree, you achieve top marks, and then you watch a spectacularly unqualified person secure the position you earned.
Purely through nepotism.
Right. You are participating in a system where wealth dictates justice, and systemic inequality just feels insurmountable.
And Epictetus observes that systemic rigging, the nepotism, the economic crushing of the working class, and his directive is absolute acceptance.
Which is wild to hear.
It is. He says that is the role the universe assigned. Fighting the director is irrational.
Just play the role of the disenfranchised, struggling citizen with perfect, untouchable dignity. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The source pushes back hard against this, and it's a totally necessary confrontation.
Oh, for sure. We have to examine whether this is profound wisdom or just the most effective psychological cope in human history.
Exactly. If you recognize the game is entirely rigged, and your response is to perfectly perform your role as the loser without even attempting to flip the board,
You are functionally ensuring the house always wins.
yes, it strips away agency under the guise of providing peace.
And the commentary explores this through the lens of what we might call the progress paradox.
Right.
If you extrapolate Epictetus's fatalism across the timeline of human development, the implications are disastrous.
The essay illustrates this perfectly. If our early ancestors operated under radical acceptance, they would have just sat shivering in the dark.
Concluding that freezing was simply their assigned role in the universal play.
We never would have harnessed fire.
No. If they accepted infant mortality as the unquestionable will of the director, we never would have developed antibiotics.
Because progress is entirely dependent on friction.
Yes, it relies on a fundamental, visceral rejection of the status quo.
Evolution, both biological and sociological, requires an organism to look at its environment and refuse to accept the limitations placed upon it.
And the ancient skeptic philosophers actually weaponized this exact contradiction against the Stoics.
Oh, I loved this part of the deep dive. The source highlights this brilliant thought experiment they used.
Yeah, so imagine a devout, unshakable Stoic on a merchant vessel caught in a catastrophic storm.
The hull breaches. The ship is going down.
And the skeptics ask, what is the Stoic's next move?
Right. If he remains on the deck, calmly observing the rising water and declaring, "It is my fate to drown, therefore I accept it," he is practically useless.
And soon to be dead.
Exactly. But if that same stoic feels the adrenaline spike, grabs a bucket, starts furiously bailing water, and fights the ocean with every ounce of his strength.
He is actively warring against his fate.
Yes. The skeptics argued that survival instinct proves fatalism is an intellectual illusion. The moment the water touches your boots, you become a rebel against the universe.
What's fascinating here is how the commentary links this ancient critique to a modern religious parable.
Ah, the joke about the flood.
Yeah, the story of the man trapped on the roof of his house during a massive flood.
Right, so a rowboat comes by, he refuses it, claiming God will save him.
A motorboat arrives, he refuses again.
Finally, a rescue helicopter drops a line and he waves it off, steadfast in his fatalistic faith.
And he inevitably drowns.
Naturally.
He arrives at the pearly gates and furiously demands why his absolute acceptance wasn't rewarded with salvation.
And the response is, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter.
Exactly. The deeper philosophical critique the source layers over this is drawn from Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of slave mentality.
Which is heavy, but so relevant.
Nietzsche argued that elevating passive acceptance to the highest moral virtue is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, if you internalize the belief that your highest calling is to be a compliant sheep, gracefully accepting your shearing, you are actively inviting the wolves. You are building the architecture of your own oppression and calling it enlightenment.
Right, because tyrants rely on a population that believes fighting back is spiritually impure.
That is such a chilling thought.
It is. To map the internal mechanics of this passivity, the source retrieves an analogy from Chrysippus.
He was an earlier foundational Stoic thinker.
Yes, and it's known as Chrysippus's cylinder. It attempts to explain why different humans react differently to the same universal forces.
The geometry of this analogy is really striking. Imagine human temperaments as solid shapes. Some individuals are constructed as cylinders, while others are cubes or squares.
And the shape dictates the interaction with external force.
Right. So if you are a cylinder, your inherent design facilitates movement.
When the universe applies a slight pressure, like a sudden job loss, a new opportunity, a conflict, you roll.
You progress forward, adapting to the terrain, turning external friction into momentum.
Conversely, the square possesses flat, rigid edges.
It is fundamentally engineered to resist momentum.
So when that same universal pressure is applied, the square doesn't roll. It digs in,
And the universe ultimately just drags the square across the pavement.
resulting in immense friction, damage, and suffering.
But the modern critique leveled by our source actually flips Chrysippus's intention.
Yeah, the video essay argues that extreme fatalism is often utilized as an elaborate defense mechanism by the squares.
It provides an intellectual shield for individuals who are terrified of change.
Right. They can disguise their fear of rolling forward as a noble practice of radical acceptance.
Which is such a call-out. Taking all of this macro-level theory, the cosmic play, the sinking ships, the geometric shapes, and dragging it down into the mud of daily life requires a manual.
And that is exactly where Epictetus's Enchiridion comes into focus.
Right. We have to see if these principles actually function as practical cognitive armor, or if they just induce a state of emotional paralysis.
So the source highlights several specific aphorisms to test this.
Yeah.
And the most accessible entry point is the bathhouse analogy.
Oh, this one is great.
Epictetus instructs his students that before they even step foot toward the public bathhouse, they must vividly pre-play the reality of the environment.
He demands you remind yourself that the bathhouse is chaotic. People will aggressively splash water.
Patrons will shove past you in the corridors.
Someone might insult you, and there is a high statistical probability a thief will attempt to steal your garments.
The psychological mechanism here is expectation management.
Yeah.
If you mentally simulate the negative stimuli before exposure, the actual event loses its shock value.
Because when the water hits your face, your baseline expectation has already accommodated the insult.
Exactly. Cortisol doesn't spike. Anger isn't triggered.
It's the psychological equivalent of checking the traffic before a commute.
Oh, that's a perfect and modern comparison.
Right. Like if the map shows a crimson line and predicts a 2-hour delay, you curate a playlist, you settle in, and you just endure it.
You're pre-armed.
But if the app promises 20 minutes and you hit a standstill out of nowhere, your blood pressure goes through the roof.
Right, because the expectation was violated. And this is highly effective for traffic or rude patrons.
Very practical.
But the tension arises when Epictetus forces this exact same emotional regulation onto profound human tragedies.
And this is where it gets tough.
The source transitions from the bathhouse to the broken cup to illustrate this escalation.
Okay, so the scenario is simple. A neighbor visits, and they're distraught because they accidentally shattered their favorite irreplaceable clay cup. The natural, objective response is to comfort them by stating the obvious reality of the material. It's clay. Clay is brittle. Breaking is the natural, eventual trajectory of all ceramics.
But Epictetus demands that you apply this identical clinical detachment when your own favorite cup shatters.
The emotional response cannot vary based on ownership.
Right. But a cup is manageable. The source then introduces a concept that shatters the modern reader's comfort zone entirely.
It really does. It refers to it as the mortal embrace.
Yeah. Epictetus explicitly instructs that when you are holding your wife or kissing your child goodnight, you must actively, consciously whisper to yourself, I am embracing a mortal.
He believes that by constantly foregrounding the fragility of their biological existence, their eventual death will not destroy you.
You will simply categorize it alongside the broken clay cup, a natural property of the material.
I found it horrifying, honestly.
It is deeply unsettling to the contemporary mind.
The analogy that immediately came to mind is attending your 5-year-old's birthday party wearing a military-grade Kevlar bomb disposal suit. Wow.
Like, sure, you are entirely insulated from trauma. If the worst-case scenario occurs, you survive intact. But the thickness of the armor guarantees you cannot feel the warmth of your child's hug.
You can't taste the birthday cake.
Right. If your internal monologue during an embrace is a clinical reminder of impending decay, you are entirely absent from the moment. You are surviving, but you have ceased to live. The protective suit analogy captures the trade-off perfectly. Invulnerability requires a massive sacrifice of texture.
It really does.
However, the source grounds this extreme posture in the psychological concept of apatheia, which demands a historical translation.
Yeah, the video clarifies that apatheia is not the root of our modern word apathy.
Right, he isn't advocating for a lethargic teenage indifference to existence.
Apatheia translates closer to an unshakable inner tranquility. It is the absence of irrational emotional turbulence.
And what the source points out is that Epictetus is outlining the foundational architecture of cognitive behavioral therapy centuries before its clinical codification.
Early CBT.
Yeah. The mechanism of CBT is identifying and rewiring cognitive distortions.
It focuses on the reality that the external event, the shattered cup, the stolen clothes, doesn't actually generate the distress.
Exactly. The distress is synthesized entirely by our internal judgment of the event.
So by enforcing a baseline expectation of mortality and chaos, he is aggressively rewiring the locus of control.
If you operate with the magical thinking that bad things only happen to other people, you are fragile.
Super fragile.
Living in a state of calculated, mild pessimism regarding the durability of the external world creates a massive buffer against shock.
It is the ultimate defense mechanism. And contextualizing it within his life as a slave where a family member could literally be sold to another province or executed before sunset makes the mortal embrace seem less like sociopathy and more like a necessary psychological tourniquet.
Right. It was a matter of survival. And while applying that tourniquet to our children feels abhorrent today, applying that exact same ruthless detachment to our ego is undeniably powerful.
Oh, 100%.
The source explores how the Enchiridion systematically dismantles vanity and the hunger for public validation.
The text uses a bizarre but brilliant analogy about a horse for this.
Yes, the horse.
Epictetus warns against absorbing pride from external assets. If a horse glances in a reflection and thinks, I am magnificent, the pride is logically sound because the magnificence is an inherent property of the horse.
Right.
But if a human struts around declaring, I am superior because I own a magnificent horse, they have completely lost their grip on reality.
They are attempting to transfer the virtue of an object onto their own character.
And the source updates this for the modern ear so well.
Yeah, it is the equivalent of demanding respect because your father is a renowned surgeon or, deriving your self-worth from the zip code of your apartment.
You are wearing someone else's competence as a mask to obscure your own lack of cultivation.
And building an identity on external scaffolding makes you hyper-vulnerable to mockery, which Epictetus addresses head-on.
He issues a stark warning to anyone attempting to elevate their life, whether through philosophy, art, or a radical career change.
You must operate under the absolute certainty that the crowd will mock you.
Because the psychological dynamics of the crowd despise deviation.
Oh, completely.
When you attempt to improve, you inadvertently hold a mirror up to the stagnation of your peers.
Yeah, their immediate defense mechanism is to mock you, to laugh at your sudden interest in philosophy or your new business venture.
But Epictetus provides the tactical response. If you internalize the mockery and abandon your pursuit, you suffer a dual defeat.
You fail at your objective, and worse, you validate their mockery, proving that your ambition was weaker than their insults.
But if you endure the friction and maintain your trajectory, the very same individuals who ridiculed you will eventually be forced into admiration.
To achieve that, though, you have to sever your emotional tether to their opinions.
Which is not easy.
No, it's not. The source breaks down Epictetus's progression of emotional maturity, which he categorizes into 3 distinct phases of blame.
The first phase is the ignorant mind. When an uninstructed individual encounters failure or misery, their immediate reflex is externalization.
They blame the economy, their upbringing, their employer, or the government.
The ego protects itself by outsourcing the fault.
The second phase is the beginner in philosophy. This individual realizes they control their own actions, so when they fail, they turn the weapon inward.
They blame themselves.
Yeah, they engage in harsh self-criticism, calling themselves lazy or incompetent.
It is closer to the truth, but it remains heavily burdened by negative emotion.
And then the third phase is the wise mind. The master of their own psychology blames no one.
Not the external world and not themselves.
They view the failure as neutral data. They extract the necessary adjustment and discard the emotional weight of blame entirely.
The source uses this framework to pose a phenomenal speculative scenario. How would the mind of Epictetus process the architecture of modern social media?
The creator of the video essay theorizes he wouldn't engage with it at all.
I agree completely.
Yeah, he would likely retreat to a remote cabin, interact with nature, and treat the internet as a psychological biohazard.
Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, or X are engineered entirely around the metric of external validation.
The algorithms basically monetize the exact fragility Epictetus spent his life trying to eradicate.
The essayist shares their own experience operating a prominent YouTube channel, navigating thousands of comments designed specifically to insult, misinterpret, or degrade their work.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the paradox of modern autonomy is just staggering here.
Explain that.
Well, if you are walking down the street and a stranger attempts to snatch the steering wheel of your car, your biological fight-or-flight response activates.
Right. You defend your physical trajectory with lethal force if necessary.
You do not hand control of your vehicle to an unhinged stranger.
Ever.
Yet cognitively, we hand the steering wheel of our emotional state over to anonymous strangers 100 times a day.
A completely faceless account leaves a derisive comment about your appearance or your work, and your heart rate elevates, your cortisol spikes, your entire day is derailed.
You have voluntarily allowed a string of digital text inputted by a troll thousands of miles away to hijack your central nervous system.
Epictetus would diagnose this as voluntary slavery.
Allowing an insult to penetrate your tranquility means you have handed the keys of your internal fortress to an invader. You have outsourced your emotional regulation to the mob.
So what does this all mean? The defense against this isn't just ignoring the comments, it's starving the ego that needs the comments to be positive in the first place.
Right.
But the ego isn't the only vector of attack. Our peace is equally threatened by our physical appetites.
Yes. The source shifts into Epictetus's framework for navigating material greed, utilizing the slippery slope of desire.
He offers a brilliantly grounded heuristic for evaluating wealth, known as the rule of the shoe.
I love the rule of the shoe.
It's so practical. He states that the human body is the absolute natural limit of property, functioning in the exact same way that the physical foot is the absolute limit of the shoe.
The teleology of the shoe, its inherent purpose, is to protect the sole of the foot from jagged rocks and freezing mud.
Once it fulfills that biological necessity, its purpose is complete.
The danger triggers when the mind decouples the shoe from the foot.
Right. You secure a shoe that fits, but then society whispers that basic protection isn't enough.
You desire the shoe to be dyed a rare purple.
Then you require intricate gold stitching.
Eventually, you demand the leather be encrusted with diamonds.
The footwear has mutated from a tool of survival into a toxic status symbol.
And the energy expended to acquire the diamond-encrusted shoe vastly outweighs the utility it provides.
To map this escalation, the source categorizes human desires into 3 distinct buckets.
The first bucket contains natural and necessary desires. These are biologically non-negotiable.
You require hydration, caloric intake, and thermal regulation.
Right. These are generally simple to satisfy and have a built-in termination point. Once you drink a glass of water, The desire vanishes.
Then the second bucket holds natural but unnecessary desires.
The biological root is valid, you need to eat, but the manifestation is extravagant.
Instead of a simple meal, you demand a dry-aged, gold leaf-wrapped Wagyu steak every evening.
The desire for food is natural, but the demand for extreme luxury is a manufactured vulnerability.
It requires immense resources to maintain and constantly resets your dopamine baseline.
Which brings us to the third bucket, the abyss.
Unnatural and unnecessary desires.
These are cravings entirely disconnected from human biology.
The thirst for absolute political domination, the hoarding of billions of dollars, the desire for fame.
Operating in this third bucket activates what modern psychology terms the hedonic treadmill.
Because the neurobiology of dopamine is actually about anticipation, not reward.
Yeah, when you acquire the $1 million, the brain doesn't stop.
It immediately recalibrates and demands 10 million to achieve the exact same chemical spike.
You are sprinting on a treadmill, exhausted, while the finish line continuously moves further away.
The video essay does not shy away from the dark terminus of this treadmill.
No, it argues that limitless desire, when totally unmoored from natural boundaries, inevitably rots the moral architecture of the individual.
The reference to figures like Jeffrey Epstein is utilized to demonstrate how infinite wealth paired with infinite unnatural desire reliably descends into exploitation, depravity, and monstrosity.
The mechanism of extreme greed is fundamentally sociopathic. It views other human beings merely as obstacles or instruments for gratification.
It's critical to analyze this because our current cultural engine is specifically designed to make us feel inadequate if we aren't pursuing the jeweled shoe.
We endure chronic stress, we sacrifice our health, and abandon our families to secure prestige titles and luxury assets.
Completely amnesiac to the fact that the shoe's only job was to help us walk comfortably.
We bankrupt our tranquility to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't respect.
Such a powerful way to frame it.
But Epictetus executes a brilliant pivot here. He argues that hoarding material wealth is a severe vulnerability, but hoarding intellectual wealth, accumulating knowledge without execution, is just as fatal.
Which leads to his critique of academic vanity.
Yes.
This resonates so deeply in the modern information age. In Rome, the intellectual flex was mastering the texts of Chrysippus.
Right, an early Stoic whose writings were notoriously dense, convoluted, and difficult to parse.
You had Roman elites treating these texts like cryptographic puzzles, walking around the forums boasting, "I am the only one who truly grasps the syntax of Chrysippus."
And Epictetus would actively mock them.
Relentlessly. He pointed out the absurdity of taking pride in someone else's poor communication skills.
He argued that if Chrysippus had simply written with clarity and precision, these academics would have absolutely nothing to brag about.
He was attacking the illusion of competence.
This raises an important question for our era, honestly. Philosophy is not an exercise in memorization.
No. True learning is not the ability to quote Marcus Aurelius at a dinner party.
Nor is it treating ancient texts as infallible religious dogma that must be rigidly obeyed.
The cognitive trap of our time is the illusion of productivity through passive consumption.
We listen to hours of brilliant thinkers, we skim dense articles, we consume deep analyses.
And our brain rewards us with a dopamine hit of feeling educated.
But if we are merely parroting the talking points of our favorite influencers without changing our behavior, we are just sophisticated tape recorders.
A tape recorder flawlessly plays back the noise it is fed, but it understands nothing.
Exactly. Epictetus demands synthesis. The video essay explicitly states that the greatest insult to a philosopher is blind obedience.
To extract the actual value of Epictetus, you have to run his ideas through the crucible of your own life.
You have to possess the intellectual courage to dissect the text.
You isolate the extreme fatalism that leads to apathy.
You reject the mortal embrace that strips away your humanity, and you discard them.
But you fiercely protect the cognitive reframing that builds resilience against a chaotic world.
Let's distill the usable architecture we've built today. We began by acknowledging the undeniable gravity of the anti-guru.
The strategies we've discussed were stress-tested in the absolute lowest, most violent strata of human society.
We extracted the mechanics of his cognitive armor. By actively managing our baseline expectations, anticipating the splashing water at the bathhouse, we insulate our nervous system against the friction of daily existence.
We examine the necessity of severing our emotional dependence on external validation, refusing to hand the steering wheel of our tranquility to the algorithms and the anonymous mobs.
We applied the rule of the shoe to our material ambitions, recognizing that the hedonic treadmill is a trap that exhausts us while promising an illusion of satisfaction.
But we firmly rejected the passivity of the square. We maintain our agency.
We use this profound mental toughness not to calmly drown on a sinking ship, but to violently bail the water and navigate toward a better reality.
As we close out this specific exploration, consider the paradox of the man we studied. Epictetus constructed absolute, unassailable mental freedom while his physical body was legally owned by a tyrant.
And that leads to a real question for you. Examine the architecture of your own life. What invisible, self-imposed chains are you currently wearing?
Are they forged from the fear of public mockery, the pursuit of unnatural desires, or the paralyzing weight of external expectations?
And more importantly, which of those chains do you possess the sheer cognitive power to simply unlock and drop to the floor right now?
Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes and never miss a step in this odyssey of thought. Until next time, keep questioning.